We're recording.
All right.
Welcome everybody to the 21 First Principles of Pricing. This whole thing came about because I was getting asked the question, how do you know what you know? And I thought that was just such a fascinating question. And as I thought about it, I realized when someone asks me a question about pricing or what they should do, I rarely just answered the question directly. And once I came up with what I thought the answer was, I thought backwards to say, so why do I think that? What was the underlying principle or concept that drove that? And then what I did was I decided I was going to go through all of the blogs that I've written over the last 10, 15 years, things that I've done, and just try to sort through it all and say, could I create these underlying principles that I always come back to? And we got it down to 21 principles of pricing. Now, I would guess that any pricing consultant, pricing expert could come up with a list of their own. And my guess is that their list would be slightly different than my list. They might have named the things differently, but in general, these are the base concepts that I know I always come back to, and most of the people I talk to tend to come back to and talk about these exact topics. What we've done is we've taken those 21 first principles and we've broken them up into 4 key categories. The way we're going to do the webinar today is I'm going to do the four strategy ones. I'll stop and ask for one question just to break things up so you don't have to listen to me talk straight for however long this takes. Then we'll do buyers, then we'll do external, and then we'll wrap it all up with execution. What's going to be fascinating is we've got a rule that says I only get 1 minute per principle, which is really hard for me to do. But Teresa's got a little dinger. She's going to ding at 10 seconds till, and then it's my job to keep track of that last 10 seconds, wrap up the slide, move on to the next slide. So we're not going to do a deep dive into any one. If you have any questions on any one that's deeper, feel free to ask the question. When it's time for Q&A, type it into the Q&A session. And with that, Teresa, are we ready?
We are more than ready. Hit it.
Okay, let's do the first 4, which are all based on strategy. Principle number 1, always use value-based pricing. If there's a single most profitable pricing decision that any company could make, it is this: use value-based pricing. The contrast to this is a lot of companies, especially hardware companies, use cost plus pricing. Even some software companies try to force cost plus pricing in, but we want to always switch to value-based pricing. Value-based pricing means charge what your customers are willing to pay. Their willingness to pay comes about based on how much value they perceive that we're going to provide to them. And that's why we call this value-based pricing. We want to try to understand how much value we deliver to customers and then try to capture as much of that as we possibly can through our pricing. This is impossible to do perfectly because, heck, I can't read anybody's mind. So I don't know how much any one person is willing to pay for my products. So how is it that I could price for a whole marketplace and be able to do that? So understand, although this isn't perfection, although this isn't exactly what we're going to do, this is the goal. This is what we're striving for. When we think about value-based pricing, we're trying to think of what are new techniques I could use to get closer and closer to charging what my customers are willing to pay. So Teresa, that felt like longer than a minute. Did I miss the timer?
You might not have heard it. You're about 15 seconds over.
Okay, sorry guys. Let's move on. Know the goals. One of the first things we want to do before we set our prices is, or even set our pricing strategy, is to know what the corporate goals are. Companies can have very different goals. Our product lines can have very different goals. So we want to think through, are we trying to build this product for a long-term profit maximization type product? Is this a product we put in place so that we can grow our market, so we can grow access or penetration into a marketplace? Are we trying to get ASPs up? There are lots of different goals that a company could have. In fact, typically your executive team, your CEO is saying, my number one objective is to grow my market capitalization. I want to get my stock price up, or I want to get the next round of investment to be at a higher valuation. And they try to determine what that is. And as they figure that out, then we can make pricing decisions to help the company or the product line achieve the specific goals. And I did hear at that time, Teresa, thank you.
Great.
Number 3, choose your pricing strategies intentionally. There are tons and tons of different pricing strategies. Many companies, when you first hear about pricing strategy, you think about penetration or neutral or skimming pricing. Penetration simply means let's price aggressively so that we can penetrate the market, win more market share. Skimming typically means let's price higher than other companies because we want to make more profit per unit and we're not so worried about how much market share we get. And neutral tends to be let's charge based on what our customers are willing to pay, and think of it as an average type price or in that middle category. But it turns out there's tons of other strategies that you could choose to use. For example, what's the pricing model that you're going to use? Are you going to do a pricing metric? Are you going to do a subscription? Are you going to do pay what people are willing to pay? Do you choose a high-low brand pricing methodology or an everyday low pricing? Are you going to do price matching? Do you use coupons? Are you going to give rebates? Are we going to put in step pricing or volume discounts? Every one of these, and there's tons more of these as well. Every one of these are a pricing strategy, and we have to decide, is this something we want to implement, something we want to use, or not? So we want to think about creating our pricing strategies or choosing our pricing strategies intentionally. Price your products for a purpose. This feels a lot like market segmentation, but instead we're going to think of it as product segmentation. You could have different purposes for different products or product lines. You might have some that you've put in place that says, I want to just use this one to grow profit. You have some that you might want to be able to penetrate a market or build a network with a freemium type product. We may be trying to attract customers, influence other decisions, signal quality. Maybe we've got product characteristics that are going to drive the way we treat them. So is your product a perishable product? Is it a high ASP product? Is it a durable or a consumable? And all of these different types of product characteristics and purposes are things that should be driving the way we think about how we price. So what I would think about if I were in your shoes is, what are the different products? What are the characteristics of those products? And can I bundle the products into this type of characteristics and say, here's how we're going to treat those products? We can create different pricing strategies, pricing methods for different product types, essentially. That is all 4 of them. Teresa, any questions?
No questions yet.
Not, well, I was going to say nice, but now that just means you have to listen to me talk again.
So for this next round, Mark, I'm just going to say 10 seconds.
Okay.
We'll try that. For our listeners, the bell might be a bit loud, so I'm going to go ahead and say 10 seconds, and then you can move on. Is that cool?
Yep, that's great, because I'm not hearing the bell very well anyway.
Awesome. All right. I suspected that was the case.
Oh, you're saying I'm talking too much?
Nope. I'm just saying when you're talking, the speaker's probably not listening. You're not able to hear it.
Okay, next section is called buyers. And this is probably, of all the different sections that I put in here, this is probably the most important of the categories. We've broken it up, or we've only got 3 principles in the buyer section. The first and most important by far is know how your buyers perceive value. Remember, we're trying to do what's called value-based pricing, which means how is it that my buyers think my products are valuable? You have to know that your buyers buy value. Here's what they don't buy. They don't buy your products. They don't buy your features. They buy the benefit or the value that they think your product is going to deliver to them. One of my all-time favorite lines is, nobody cares about your product. What people care about is what your product is going to do for them. Our job is to think really, really hard about how they perceive our value. One of the basic concepts we have in this area is will I and which one. Buyers have typically make both decisions. Am I going to buy something in the product category? In which case they're trying to figure out what's the value of solving the problem if I buy a product that looks like this.
10 seconds.
And the other one is a which one. What's the value of your product relative to your competitors' products? And now we have to know what our competitors do, what we do better, and what that's worth to our customers. But we want to always think about how our buyers are perceiving value. Principle number 6, understand buyer irrationality. It turns out that buyers are not overly rational. In fact, to be fair, it's impossible to know everything about every alternative and make the perfect decision. So buyers are using heuristics all the time. We're making guesses or estimates. There's a whole field around this called behavioral economics. It's a lot of fun in terms of the field. Our job should be to understand a lot of those techniques that we could be using in the world of behavioral economics, and using those to help us make decisions on how we price our products, how we present our prices to the marketplace, how we present our messages to the marketplace. Probably the most powerful of all of the behavioral economics philosophies or concepts is called prospect theory, which is really loss aversion. People hate losses, and they hate losses more than they like gains.
10 seconds.
Which means people will go more out of their way to avoid a loss than they will to capture a gain. And we'll see this in action in several different places as we go through the day today, or as you go through your pricing work. Number 7, price the who. This has to do with segmentation. Segmentation is the second most profitable pricing decision you could possibly make as a company. When you think of segmentation, we're going to break it down into 2 key chunks. First is going to be market segmentation. You want to create market segments around the types of problems that your buyers, your customers are trying to solve. We can create different product lines for different market segments, and different market segments can have dramatically different willingnesses to pay for essentially a similar function or the same function. So step 1 is let's figure out what those market segments are. And then step 2, inside one of those market segments, we're going to do what's called price segmentation. Some people inside that market segment are willing to pay us a lot, and some people inside that market segment aren't willing to pay us very much at all.
10 seconds.
If we want to try to capture all that, then we use techniques called price segmentation so that we can win those customers with low willingness to pay, and yet still charge more to the customers who are willing to pay us more. Really, really powerful and important technique. So here are the 3 buyer's principles. And did we have any questions, Ms. Teresa?
We do. Jose says, can you mention some of the new techniques to get to know the value our customers have?
I'm not sure about new techniques, but I can mention some techniques. Probably my single favorite technique is to go talk to your buyers. I think what typically happens is we don't listen to our market well enough to understand even what are the possible answers. There's a technique called a value conversation, which is a specific type of conversation that your salespeople should be able to do. Your pricing people should understand what this means. Your product managers and product marketers should be able to do these. And it's essentially a process where we can go out to a customer, a buyer, we find out what are the things that are important to them, and we find a way to quantify that. And then eventually, after we've got it all quantified, we say, so what's it worth if we could move that number from this to this? In the B2B world, it's relatively straightforward to turn almost anything into a dollar. In the B2C world, that's a little bit harder. And so now we're just doing what is it worth, and trying to get a feeling or trying to measure what a customer thinks, as opposed to trying to calculate the dollars that we're going to make or save a customer. But without a doubt, that's the most powerful technique that there is. There are other techniques that we talk about a lot, something called value tables, which gives you a way to document it and think through it. But in the end, you're going to go talk to your customers anyway in order to fill out a value table.
Got it. That's it for now.
All right.
Be sure to send those questions over in the Q&A. We would love to spend most of our time at the end of this webinar just answering your questions and making this as engaging as possible. So pop them in there as soon as they come to mind.
Next section is the external pieces. So these are 3 other, obviously buyers are external to our company. but these are three more. Treat our channel partners like our customers. If you're selling through a distribution channel, then your distributor almost always has a choice between carrying your product or carrying your competitor's product. And maybe a lot of distributors carry both products, in which case, when a customer walks in the door, that distributor or distribution channel has a choice. Am I going to sell that customer your product, or am I going to sell that customer your competitor's product? You can think of that distributor as they've got to make decisions. Will I carry a product like this? Which one am I going to carry? Which one am I going to sell to a customer? We want to think about those people just like we would think about our customers. What are the decisions they're going to make? How do they make that decision? Oftentimes the decision to them is, what's the easiest thing to sell? How do I make the most money most easily or most quickly? And
10 seconds.
we should be thinking hard about how do we put together programs to incentivize our channel partners based on pricing and margins and things that we would normally give them. But in the end, we always start by thinking about what's that end customer going to pay us. Principle number 9, pay attention to competition, but not too much. I see a lot of companies over focus on competition. They need to copy their competitor's product, or they're just terrified that what the competitors released most recently or what the new feature is. It's important that we know our competitors. It's important we know what they're doing, but we shouldn't be focusing our world around that. We should be focusing almost all of our efforts around our buyers, our marketplace. What are the things they want? The closer you are to this thing called a commodity, and I hate that word for many, many reasons, but the closer you are to having direct competition and it's easy to swap your product for a competitor's product, then the more you need to focus on your competitor, the more you need to understand what's different between your product and your competitor's products. But as you move away from that space, you should be spending less and less of your time or energy focused on what your competitors can do, and spend much, much more of your time focused on what do your buyers actually need and want, and how can you deliver that to them. And it may be that in the end, your buyers don't even know you have competitors because you've solved their problems so well for them.
And time.
Excellent. Number 10, obey the law. This is, we have 21 first principles here. I will talk for hours on 20 out of those 21, and here's the one I will not. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not an expert, but here's what I can tell you is that in different countries, they have different rules. Different states have different rules. As a general set of principles, we should be thinking about the following things. Don't do price gouging, and you're probably not going to get in trouble for that. And don't try to collude with your competitors. In fact, a really, really good rule is never, ever, ever talk to your competition about pricing. Never mention price. It's just, it is a great way to get yourself in jail. But probably the single biggest piece of advice I can give you for this one is go talk to your legal counsel. If you think you're going to do anything that might get you in trouble, just talk to your lawyers and they'll guide you. I am not the one to do that for you. All right. So only 3 external ones. Do we have any questions on those, Teresa?
We do not have any questions. You must be communicating very clearly today, Mark, because everybody's getting it and they're not left with anything that they're wondering about.
Yeah, I'd like to think that was the case.
No questions at this point.
All right.
Maybe they're all holding them till the end.
We'll see. We'll see. So this is the part that everybody gets excited about, or is everybody's really interested in, because now we're in the, what is it that you can do? What are the things that you should be doing? And so we've got the execution. There are 11 of these bullets. I'm essentially going to finish out the webinar, and then we'll open up for questions again. And it can be on these 11, or it could be on any of the 21, doesn't matter. Principle number 11, though, we're going to drive product and packaging decisions using value. So for a moment, let's pretend like I'm talking directly to a product manager. Mr. Product Manager, you have to decide what's the next feature you're going to ask engineering to build. You have to decide how are you going to package up the features into your good, better, best packages. You have to decide which features we're going to offer in which package. These are really hard decisions to make. And how do you make those decisions? Once you start thinking about value, once you understand that your buyers are buying based on value, then you'll realize the way you make those decisions really needs to be based around value. Because if we haven't built products that our customers value, it's really hard for us to put a price on it and sell it at a reasonable number. We should be focusing a ton on value as we're making those really, really early decisions on what should our products look like, what should our packaging look like.
10 seconds.
I only took 50 seconds on that one.
Good job.
We're going to, number 12, we're going to use marketing to create value. In fact, I think a lot about creating value and communicating value, but in the world of marketing, buyers buy perceived value. If you build a product that is the best thing ever built and your buyers don't know it, they're not going to buy it. And so our marketing team takes this real value that we've built into our products and they create perceived value because they've communicated it to our marketplace in a way that resonates with our market. If we haven't created that perceived value, people aren't going to buy our products and they're not going to pay us a lot of money for our products. How do we do that? Well, we have to understand what is it that our buyers care about? What do they value? And then how can we create the marketing messages around that value that truly resonate with our marketplace, that truly resonate with our buyers? So our marketing department is really key to creating the perceived value that we eventually get paid for. Number 13, estimate willingness to pay. Now that we've got a product, now that we've communicated our value to our marketplace, the question becomes, how much would a buyer pay us for that? Oftentimes when people think about pricing, this is the one thing we're thinking of. How do I measure or guess or estimate how much a customer is willing to pay? There are lots of different techniques that you can use. One, I've already talked about it in the Q&A, was the value conversation. We can go out and understand how much value somebody gets from our product, and then we might charge some percentage of that as a fee or as a price, and we're able to get that. There are many other techniques that you can use. So you can use, probably my favorite measurable technique is Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter, because it's relatively easy to implement. You're going to want to look that up on Google because I don't have time to teach it right now, but I'll say it slower. Van Westendorp price sensitivity meter. It works really well. There's another tool that's called conjoint analysis that we're going to be working on a course on that here in the very near future. Another technique, economic value estimation, is essentially us guessing or thinking about the types of methods that we've learned or the types of values that we've learned in our value conversations. We could turn around and apply those using this technique. But you're going to want to create some method or think through some method that says, here's how we're going to estimate how much our customers are willing to pay. Number 14, apply systems for accuracy and efficiency. When we think about systems, there are these pretty high-end enterprise level pricing systems that are available to us. These are things like Pros, Vendavo, Zilliant, Model N, PriceFX, and I apologize to any software vendor that I didn't mention just now, but these are all pretty high-end methods or systems that you can use to help you do pricing in a consistent manner across your entire company. Even if you don't have one of those systems, you've got systems yourself in place. You're using Excel, or you've got an escalation process, or there's all these different systems or processes you put in place inside your company that are going to help you be consistent and accurate as we start quoting prices, negotiating deals, trying to close deals. So these systems are really important. We want to make sure we understand them, think through them, so that we can be as effective as possible as we're delivering prices to our marketplace. Principle number 15, costs. Use costs correctly. They rarely matter to pricing. Here's the easiest way to think about this. Without even knowing the cost of my product, if I know my customer is willing to pay $100, how much do you think we should charge? I'm thinking $100. So if our product costs $10 to make, how much should we charge? I'm thinking $100. If our product costs $50 to make, how much should we charge? I'm thinking $100. If our product costs $200 to make, how much should we charge? I'm thinking we shouldn't be in this business because our customers aren't going to pay us $200. Why are we doing that? The cost to build a product has very little to do with the price we're going to charge, other than, is this business we want to accept? Is this a place where we want to be? There's one tiny exception to that rule. It's called take it or leave it markets. We could go into depth some other time around that, but that's like pricing potato chips at a grocery store, where we get to set one price and everybody who shops is paying that one price, and some choose to buy us, some choose not to buy us. In those cases, our variable costs matter some, but still it's almost always around willingness to pay. So
And
think of it this way: willingness to pay drives pricing, costs don't. Number 16, help your salespeople sell value. We've talked about value conversations a few times already. Let's make sure our salespeople know how to have value conversations. It's the single best way to sell value. But to our marketing, our product managers, and our pricing people, have we documented the value that we think we deliver to our marketplace? We could do this using value tables. We could do this after we've done our own value conversations, and we know typically here's the types of ways that people get value from our product. And we can teach this to our salespeople to make them much more effective at the things they're trying to get accomplished. One of my favorite sayings that I say to anybody in the company, other than salespeople, is if your salespeople are asking for discounts too often, it's because you haven't given them the tools, the confidence, and the products to be able to win the deals at the prices you think they should be winning at. So it's our job to provide them the products and the tools and the confidence so they can go sell value. Principle number 17, price large deals strategically. Almost every deal, there's a bigger deal involved. When someone comes and asks for whatever it is, some number of units, it's possible that they need more units over a longer period of time. It's possible they need other products that go along with it. There's almost always a bigger deal. We should be thinking very hard about how do we get the deal to be bigger, maybe set ourselves up for high switching costs. So the next time the deal comes along, they can't switch away from us, or it's very expensive too. And so it gives us the ability to get a little bit higher prices later. We might be thinking, how do we get our foot in the door, just so that we could do the land and expand methodologies over time. But there's always a bigger deal. We want to be thinking about what's that deal look like? How should we be making really smart strategic decisions in the short run to maximize our long-term profitability? Oh, change prices carefully. So first off, when you do price increases, understand that your buyers hate price increases. Everybody hates a price increase. If you're going to increase prices on your buyers, you need to have a reason. The only reason I've ever found that people accept is that your costs went up. Now, they're not happy when you tell them that, but at least they understand it. What they don't want to hear is, oh, we think we can make more profit and you're still going to pay us, so we're going to raise your prices. You could also raise your prices, especially if you're in a subscription type business. Be really strategic about it. Find those people who have the highest usage, which means they probably have the highest willingness to pay. And we raise the prices on them and we watch what happens to our churn. And if our churn doesn't go up, then we go to the next level of people and raise the prices on them. And eventually we get to a point where if we raise the prices, we start losing too many people, so we don't raise prices on anybody below that. That just makes a ton of sense, doesn't it? When it comes to price decreases, my advice is don't do it unless you're trying to follow your competition down. But I can't think of a really good reason to lower prices if it's not competitors driving prices down. I mean, it's almost never a good answer. Principle number 19, KPIs, use your data and your metrics thoughtfully. In today's world, we have so much data. It is incredible the amount of data we have. You can measure so many different things. The question becomes, what should you measure and why? If you start measuring and monitoring the wrong things, you might be driving behaviors that aren't the profit maximizing behaviors we really want. We should be thinking through these. The two metrics that you want to watch really carefully are ASP, average selling price, and the revenue or the quantity. And you want to do this for every one of your products. What's the ASP and revenue of each individual product? And you're watching the trends, you're watching for changes. If your ASP drops or your revenue drops in a specific product, what that's telling you is there's something going on in the marketplace. It could be salespeople's behavior. It could be more competition in the marketplace. It could be seasonality and demand is dropping. But when you watch those two metrics and the trends, when you start to see changes, you ask yourself, what's causing that change? And now we can start to dive deeper into finding out, well, are we changing the way we're doing discounting? Are we having a lower win-loss conversion than we used to have? Our job is to look for what are those things that are causing our ASPs to go down. Can we identify those and maybe get them fixed or come up with other ideas? Number 20, organize for pricing excellence. The question that I often get asked, and this one really addresses it, is who should own pricing? And the answer to that question is probably not one person. It's probably a whole bunch of different people inside your company own a piece of pricing, own different roles. But as an organization structure that I love for organizing pricing, it's starting at the very top and having a thing called a pricing council. Pricing council is usually a bunch of executives who are making large strategic decisions. Should we buy a new pricing system? Should we even go through a price increase that's coming up? What are the other pricing strategies we should consider? These people are making pretty high-level strategic decisions. Then below the pricing council, you've got a pricing committee. This is probably director level, manager level type people. They're responsible for doing the execution of whatever the pricing council says, this is what we want to get done. And so think of it as more of the workers or the people that are managing the process to make sure it actually happens. And then the third role I love in a company is somebody called a pricing champion. A pricing champion is an individual, or it could be more than one individual, but each individual is a champion. And these people have 3 skills that are amazingly valuable that drive pricing change inside your company. First, they've got pricing expertise above and beyond what are the techniques you use inside your own company. They have a good feeling or understanding of what data is and how to use it, although they don't have to be data scientists. And the third skill they have is the ability to lead or influence. And that's probably the hardest of the 3 skills. When I talk to most pricing people, it's a skill that's challenging for us that are really quantitative to understand how to do that, but it's so crucial to truly being a pricing champion. Number 21, create a value-based business. This is actually a summary of all of the other ones that we've talked about. And that is, can you create a culture in your company around value? And when I think of a culture, I think of, can we create real value by defining and developing the right products? Can we communicate that value by understanding what value truly means to our buyers and then coming up with marketing messages that resonate with them? Can we capture that value in the price levels that we set and the messages and the techniques that sales uses when they're out talking to our customers? This is truly a value culture. One of my favorite companies is a company called W.L. Gore. You probably know them as because they make Gore-Tex. And W.L. Gore, if you were to go talk to almost any employee in the company and you just say the following, please finish this sentence. What's the? And everybody will answer value, because everybody in that company thinks about what's the value of what it is that we're about to go do. And I think that is such an incredible culture, because they know that why would they do something if they weren't creating value in the marketplace or for their buyers? All right, we made it through 21. Let me do a quick wrap up, and then I'd love to open this up for any questions you guys have. These are the last 11 for the execution piece, but you're going to see all those because we're going to send out, Teresa, I assume we're going to send out the infographic. Is that right?
We are. Yes, first time. We're going to get that out in the hands of everyone. Each of these strategies, each of these principles will have a mini explanation next to them for better recall. So we'll get that out to you along with the replay.
Nice. And so real quickly, I just want to explain one program that we have, and then I want to open this up for questions. We have a program called the Insiders Program on our educational site, which is championsofvalue.com. We have a bunch of online courses. Actually, today we have exactly 5 online courses. I put out a new course about every other month. So this will also get you access to all of our future courses. And possibly some people think the most valuable piece of it is office hours, because once a month or once a week, I set aside an hour and open it up so that anybody who wants to call in and talk to me, who's in the Insiders Program, has access. And usually I'm answering questions about courses, or I'm coaching them about their career, or we just talk about a random topic. So we have a new offer until June 30th. We have the offer BOGO, buy one, get one. Love that. And so if you want to sign up for the Insiders Program, you can have sign up for 1 month. You're going to get the second month free, just to give you a little incentive to go ahead and sign up. And that'll be good until June 30th. Just so that you can see, these are the 5 courses we currently have up. Value-based business, which is a much longer explanation of what we did on that very last bullet. We talk about pricing metrics in the world of subscription. It's what are you going to charge for? There's a fantastic course, Accelerate Your Subscription Business, that'll give you an understanding of how to run a subscription business, how to price and package in a subscription business. There's a course called Packaging, probably the hardest course it was for me to create. And some people are saying it's one of the hardest courses when they take it. So it's pretty interesting, but it's all about how do you decide what features go into which package. Our most recent course, Economic Value Estimation, is really an exercise. It just walks you through doing an exercise that you want to learn how to do over and over and over inside your company, which helps you estimate the value of your products. And currently I'm working on a course called Conjoint Analysis. So it's going to help you figure out how to use Conjoint to figure out how much your buyers value individual features inside your product. You can see the other courses we have here, and the list goes on forever. This is just a partial listing of things I've come up with, and it's not a commitment as to what order I'm going to do them, but just tons of great topics that are going to be coming up in the very near future. I love feedback from my insiders to say these are the courses that are most available. And I'm going to open it up for questions while I leave these quotes up here. These are just past students of mine and things they've said about our courses. So Teresa, let's have some questions.
All right, we've got some. I'm excited. All right. So Malik is asking, what is your view on conjoint analysis in consumer products and services?
I think it's incredible. In fact, I like it more in consumer than I do in B2B. Not that I don't like it for B2B, but in B2B, I've got other techniques I can use to come up with dollars. In B2C, it's really, really hard to figure out how much somebody values a feature. So I love conjoint analysis in a B2C space. I'm not sure if you know this, but back when I was younger, you could buy when you bought a car, in fact, you typically spec'd out all the things you wanted if you were going to buy a brand new car. So this is the radio I want, and these are the wheels I want, and blah, 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 blah. The car manufacturers obviously moved away from all that, but the technique they used to figure out how to create those packages was conjoint analysis. And so that's obviously a B2C marketplace that really took advantage of conjoint.
Awesome. All right, and Sean is asking, what are the rules of thumb for locating the deal behind the deal or the next deal?
Oh my gosh, I've never even thought about that. Sean, I think the answer is going to be experience and asking the question. So most things, when I do them, I don't pretend to know the answers. So if I were trying to find the deal behind the deal that's going on, I don't think I would pretend to say, oh, now we have to think of this, this, and this. I might get my room full of, I've got a salesperson, a marketing person, a support person, and I would ask the room, what's the next deal look like? Or what's the bigger deal? Or what else could we get from this deal? And we're gonna get a bunch of ideas from different people, but if you think you're gonna be able to do it on your own, you'll probably miss really good opportunities. So I think that's what I would be doing.
All right. And let's see here. I gotta scroll up. There we go. When pricing is based on value-based pricing in a B2B environment for SW firms, how can we get a feel for customer willingness to pay? Do we need to define what S/W firms are? Do you know?
Software.
Oh, yeah, yeah, got it. Of course.
So she said B2B, right?
She did. Oh, yes, he.
Okay. So this is one of the coolest things ever. It is hard for people to adopt this right away or to grasp this right away, but almost all of my coaching sessions with B2B companies go something like this. Give me a feature of your product. And so for the sake of argument, I'm going to use a to-do package that coordinates companies. And so what's a feature of your product? It allows me to assign a task to other people in my network. Okay, great. What problem does that solve? And so I almost always go back to these 4 columns in what I call a value table, which are problem, solution, result, and value. So the problem, what problem does that solve? Well, the problem it solves is I need to make sure that I've given the task to somebody, I have a way to track it, so the task may not get communicated or completed. Excellent. So what's the result? I'm sorry, we built this feature. It's called assign tasks to coworkers. Great, what's the result? The result is tasks happen more often on time. Well, can I quantify that somehow? Yeah, it turns out that maybe we drop 30% fewer tasks than we used to forget or not get done. Excellent, we just got that quantified. And then we move out to the value column. What's the value of that to the market, to this specific buyer in particular? And so we could say to that buyer, okay, you're dropping 30% fewer tasks. How many tasks did you have before you started? If we drop 30% fewer, what do we think that's going to look like? What does it cost you each time you lose a task? On average, what do you think that is? And we find a way to turn that into a dollar value. Now, it doesn't mean that's what we're going to charge them, but it means that's what it's worth to them. If we could not forget 30% of the tasks, and we're doing 1,000 tasks a year, that's 300 tasks. Is that, multiple millions of dollars in rework we didn't have to do? So that's really the process you walk through. It isn't a trivial thing to do, but boy, is it powerful.
All right, thanks for that, Mark. And Mark Thomason says, hi, Mark.
Hey, Mark, how are you?
What about the frequency of reviewing pricing? How often and which subset of rules are important for reviews?
I don't think there's a hard and fast rule that says here's how often you should be reviewing pricing. One of the principles we talked about was KPIs, or what are you going to measure? And one of the things you could be doing is every time you see changes in your KPIs, that may be a really good time to say, we ought to review our pricing. What's going on? Now, you may also say, gee, when I see a competitive announcement, maybe we want to get ready because we're going to be doing a pricing review relatively soon. But there are some products where it never changes, right? If I'm going to sell Doritos, I don't know that I need to do a pricing review very often at all. If I'm going to sell a tech product where competition is changing, technologies are changing, capabilities are changing, I might be doing a pricing review once a year or more often than once a year if it were just a scheduled thing. But my preferred method is to watch my KPIs and let those indicate when I need to do a pricing review.
Great. All right. We have another question, and I'm not pronouncing his name on purpose because I'm not going to do it right. So we'll just Mo. I'm going to call you Mo for short for right now. What metrics can be used to understand customer willingness to pay?
Yeah, so if we're just going to measure it, my favorite technique is a method called Van Westendorp's price sensitivity meter. In essence, what we do is we go out and we describe our product to a potential buyer, and then we ask them 4 specific questions. Those 4 questions are something like, at what price is this too expensive you wouldn't even consider it? At what price does it sound so cheap the quality can't be very good? At what price is it starting to get expensive, but you still might consider it? And at what price do you think it is a bargain, a good buy for the money? And when you ask those 4 questions, what you've done in the first 2 is you've kind of bracketed their answers. And then in the second 2, what you really care about is the third one. At what price do you think it's starting to get expensive, but you still might consider it? And if you ask this of 20, 50 people, you start to get a really good feel for what your market is willing to pay for your product. So it's probably my favorite technique to use. If you want a really fast and dirty technique that's way easier than that, I can't say it's been proven, but I love this technique. You can never ask somebody, how much are you willing to pay for this product? But what you can ask that often gets you a reasonable answer, how much do you think other people would pay for this product? And I love that question because it's just easy to ask at the end of any survey.
Great. Thanks for that, Mark. All right. Leah has a really great question. I don't think we've been asked before, and I know you'll have a great answer. Do your courses talk to service-based businesses too?
Absolutely. And I don't mean that in a self-serving sense. When I think of pricing, I think of pricing as we price an offer, and how do people make decisions between buying my offer? Now, I almost always say the word product because when I say product, I think service, I think physical product. It doesn't really matter to me because I've got a buyer who's trying to choose something to solve a problem, and they're willing to pay money to do that. And that's really the key issue, is what are the problems we're solving? What's the competition look like? How's that buyer making that decision? And then how much is it worth to them when they make that decision? So in essence, it's identical. There are nuances to services. There are nuances to subscriptions. There are nuances to selling physical products. But in general, it's always about how does a buyer perceive the value of our product relative to the alternatives.
I'm coming back. I'm trying to unmute here. All right. And Chris says, Mark, you replied to a post I made about fixed cost in pricing. Could you explain the simplest way why they shouldn't be taken into account for pricing? Something I can bring to my leadership.
Is there an easy way to say why fixed costs don't matter to pricing? Yes. The only way you can get fixed costs, okay, so let me pause for a second. Fixed costs would matter in pricing if we were doing cost plus pricing. And then what happens is we take all of our fixed costs, we make a forecast on how many units we're going to sell, we divide our fixed cost by the number of units we're going to sell, and we get some cost that we then add to our variable cost, and we say this is our overall cost, or sometimes that's called allocated cost. There's another phrase for that that's slipping my mind. And then we use that for our cost plus. But what happens if we sell twice as many units? Then our fixed costs are really only half of what they were. What happens if we sell half as many units? Then our fixed cost per unit is actually double what it was in our projection. When we simply take our fixed costs and say we're going to stick this in, then our forecast had better be right. And we put up a new video recently, how to price, and that one was called the allocated fixed costs or opportunity cost video. So see if we can find that one, or maybe Teresa, we can put that in the links or something.
Yep. Yes, I'm typing away over here.
But I think that's going to be the easiest way to explain it. In the end, it's, are we going to do cost plus pricing? And if we're going to do cost plus pricing, then almost everything I talk about doesn't matter.
All right. And just so everybody knows, Mark and I will put our heads together and put together several links, and we'll include that in the email that we'll send out to you after the webinar, along with the replay. So you have all the resources that we talked about today and you have access to that. All right. Got that one. All right. Steve says, when you're tackling a new adjacent market in B2B environment, knowing it's not the same as the existing markets you work with, what are the biggest things to look at when making this pivot in addressing how to price or how to find gaps in your product you may have?
Yes. So in my mind, when I hear that question, I hear it almost identically to, I want to go after a new market, period. How do I build a product and price it for that new market? Now, what you get to start with in the question that you asked is, I've already got a product, it's serving a marketplace. I understand the value into that market. Now, how is this other market different? And so you might have a leg up, a little bit faster start, but in the end, you want to do all the same things, which is I'm going to go out into that marketplace and I'm going to listen for what are the problems that they currently have. I might be looking for problems that I know we can solve with our product, but I want to hear them say, I've got this problem. Then what are the problems they have that I don't solve today? And maybe I could put it into my product. And so now I'm tweaking the product. And while we're going through that, we're listening for the value statements. We're trying to understand where the value is going to come from. In the end, it sounds to me almost identical to just building a new product or putting a new product out in the marketplace. But you've already got a head start because you've got a specific product and a really good understanding of that space already.
Got it. Thanks for that. We have just a comment by Frederick. He says, I like the business model design strategy that incorporates many of these concepts. Strategizer by Alex Osterwalder. It considers all the interactions and dynamic nature of the world. Any comments or additional insights on that, Mark?
So I got to say, I've not heard of it before. So I'll make a note and look it up, but I've not heard of it.
And I don't have a name for this one. He's on a Pixel 3 phone though, or she. Says, I'm not sure the strategy concerning price hikes that you suggest would work in a B2B world. Customers talk to each other and acquire each other, and raising prices for only a part of the customers might create a backlash as it's hard to defend. What do you think about raising prices in a SaaS world when you add value to the product over time? The price hike might come in effect when a contract is renegotiated, for example. Any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. If you've got a contract in the B2B world, you really can't hike prices until the contract comes up anyway. And so that's when you're going to do it. The question that you're asking is less about price hikes, and it's more about price segmentation. Can I charge different customers different prices in a B2B marketplace? And I can tell you the answer to that is absolutely yes. It happens all the time. If you've got salespeople negotiating prices with customers, there's no chance they always negotiate to the exact same price with every single customer. So every customer is probably paying a different price anyway. So therefore, we know that that's not happening. There are many, many reasons why it's legitimate to charge different customers different prices. We just need to think through what are those reasons in your marketplace that might be a reasonable thing to say. But the reason that I say this whole, in a SaaS marketplace, raise prices on people who have a higher willingness to pay is let's use an example of a gym membership for a second. And if I'm running a gym and I need to raise my prices because whatever reason I think I can get away with it, or it doesn't matter. And it turns out that I've got people that come to my gym 5 times a week. I know they love the gym. I could probably raise their price 10% and they're still going to come to the gym and they're still going to pay my price. But what about those people who bought a gym membership a year ago? They still pay me my $50 a month or whatever it is, and they never ever come to the gym. What do you think happens if I raise the price on them by 10%? Well, a bunch of them say, oh my gosh, I never used this anyway. Why am I paying this? And then they cancel. The whole point is for us to say, who are we less likely to lose because we raise their prices? And those are the people we want to raise prices on. And once you decide that you can get away with price segmentation, you can charge different customers different prices, then that's just a simple strategy for us to implement.
Hopefully that was helpful. All right. Nicholas says, of the different analysis techniques, conjoint, max diff analysis, value conversations, interviews with customers, what are the pros and cons of each, and which can be more beneficial to different company models?
So do we have a couple more hours?
I was going to say something similar, but I'll give you an opportunity to be succinct and brief.
So they all have different functionalities or capabilities. Max diff and conjoint are very similar to each other. Think of max diff as helping you figure out which features are more important than other features, but it can't put a dollar value on the individual features. Conjoint has the ability, it's a little bit harder for your respondent to do, but it has the ability to put a dollar value on features. So it really depends on what you're trying to get accomplished as you do that. In our packaging course, we talk about doing max diff because what we're trying to figure out is which are the features that we want to put in which packages. At least that's one of the 3 techniques we teach there. Conjoint, we would use conjoint a lot if we're trying to say, what's the value of individual features and how much do I think I could charge for those individual packages I would put together. So those 2 are different. Value conversations, these are things we do one-off, right? I'm learning from one individual buyer how much value that buyer has. What we want to do as product managers, product marketers, pricing people, we want to do enough of those that we start to get a feel for how our buyers think, but we're not going to be able to go out and do that for every customer. If our salespeople can learn to do that for every customer, then they're better able to capture the value of that we're trying to deliver. And so our job should be to help teach our salespeople what it is they're looking for, what those value points are. And there was a 4th one in there. What was the 4th one, Teresa? It was max diff, conjoint, value conversations, and
Conjoint, value conversations, interview with customers. That was it. There was just 3.
Oh, okay. Got it.
All right. And Moen helped me with his name, and Moen has another question. This is the gentleman I could not pronounce earlier. In an environment of pricing for bids, should company overheads be a part of the price segment, or should overheads be a part of the cost segment?
So I have to make a couple guesses about this one. When you say part of the cost segment, it almost sounds like you're doing a government type bid where the government is willing to pay us our cost plus. And if that's the case, and we can win the deal, I want to put as many things into the cost as I possibly can. But if that's not the case, then what I would say is we want to be thinking about how do we win business, right? So a buyer comes to us and says, I need a bid on a project. Could you give me an RFP, or could you give me a proposal to respond to my RFP? And what we need to do is think about, what does it take to win that business? I would be thinking less about what's my overhead cost and more about how much do I think I could win that business for. And I'm a huge fan of good, better, best pricing. When I respond to an RFP, I almost always respond with 3 different packages. And the way I define those 3 packages are, I usually put together a package that's a little bit less than what they asked for in the RFP. And I charge a pretty aggressive price, so they know that if it's all about price, then they're going to choose that one. I usually give them exactly what they asked for in the RFP, and I charge what I think is the price that I really want, and that's what I'm going to be able to win at. And then I put together a package that's way more than they asked for, and I charge a really high price. And what that does is it anchors them to a high price. It shows them that we're really high quality. It shows them we have capabilities way beyond what they asked for if they're going to want to expand their position or what it is they're going to buy. And so typically when I respond to RFPs, it's more about, what do I think the customer is willing to pay? Although I realize that's really hard to do in an RFP world, but that's usually what I'm thinking about, much more so than how do I allocate costs. Teresa, you're on
You
mute.
know, I love the buttons, but when they work. Try to keep the typing to a minimum on this end as I'm answering questions. So, all right, I have one last question for us, and then we'll wrap it up here and get ready to send this out as a replay. And I don't have a lot of context on the question. It's a little broad, so I'm going to offer it anyway, and maybe Sean can give us a little more context live here as you talk about it. So earlier he said, how much of the value can you normally capture? Now, I don't have any context on what or how, but Sean, if you want to offer up any insights that Mark can work from, that would be great. Otherwise, Mark, I'm going to let you try to answer that.
It's okay. I actually know the answer to the question.
Well, fabulous.
Yeah. So excellent question, Sean. This is something that we call economic value. In the world of B2B, let's pretend that I have a product, and if you were to buy my product, it's going to make you another $1 million in profit. As a rule of thumb, in a will I situation, so you're going to decide, do I want to buy a product like this or not? Then we can capture, let's say 10% of that $1 million is a pretty reasonable number. Now, as risk goes down, so if you could guarantee them $1 million, they would give you much more than 10%, right? They'd give you half of that, or 70 or 80% of that. But so rarely can we guarantee that the number is typically around 10%. Now, in a which one situation, meaning they're comparing me to a competitor, if they believe that I'm going to help make them $1 million and my competitor is only going to help make them $900,000, that means I'm going to make them $100,000 more than my competition will. A really good rule of thumb here is we can get half of that difference as a price above whatever my competitor is charging. So if my competitor was going to charge $100,000 for their product, and we are going to deliver $100,000 more value than they are, half of that $100,000 value we deliver is $50,000. I get to add that to their price, which I said was $100K. So now we could probably charge about $150,000 as how much we're going to capture from our market. That was probably confusing as hell, because even when I have slides and I teach that to people, they have a really hard time grasping it. But we'll put that in a course one day, or maybe in a how to price one day, and get that out so that people can see it better. Hopefully you got that, Sean.
All right, Mark, that wraps us up. No more questions. We've outlasted everyone with their questions. And so we will get busy getting this processed and getting it into an email and sent out. Mark and I, as I said earlier, we'll put our heads together and get you all the relevant links that can give you the resources we talked about today. And we should probably get everything sent out to you by first thing tomorrow morning, if not yet today. So we sure appreciate everyone being here on the webinar. We hope this was helpful. We hope this will give you some more insights to move forward. And as always, join the conversation at community.championsofvalue.com. That is where you can have one-on-one conversations, or at least chat conversations in our community with Mark. And we'd love to be able to continue to support all of your pricing initiatives. Mark, any last words before we get out of here?
No, that was fun.
As always, as always. Well, thank you all for taking your time today. We sure appreciate you spending it with us, and we look forward to seeing you on the other side.
Thanks, everybody.